Hey everybody, James Yeager with Tactical Response. Thanks for watching. Today, a very special guest, Chris Cox with the NRA. Chris, thank you so much.
Great to be with you, James. Welcome to NRA.
This is not my first trip here. And so, full disclosure, this guy's actually my friend. He's been in a class. He's the best student I've ever had in my life. You're way better than Darren Lasort. And but I know you. I know you, the folks that work here. And so when people talk bad about the NRA, I wanted them to actually know who, like Chris Cox and who you guys were. And so first thing is, were you carrying a gun when you walked in the building today?
I was.
Okay,
absolutely.
So you don't only believe in the Second Amendment, you exercise your Second Amendment rights.
Well, as I told Chris Wallace on Fox News, that as a law-abiding gun owner, I am armed security. I'm responsible for my family, myself, my coworkers who don't carry. So I take it seriously. This is personal and professional.
Mm-hmm. And you yourself, you like all kinds of guns. I've just in your office. I see stuff with wood and pretty stuff, and I see the evil black guns and and things. I see all of it.
You know, people ask me, what are your favorite guns? And truthfully, my first guns are my favorite guns. My first pistol that my father gave me, my first semi-auto Mini 14 Ruger, my first hunting rifle that my dad gave me, again, as a little guy. And now, I don't get a chance. I love to hunt, but I don't get a chance to hunt very often. So if I have a rare opportunity to shoot, I want to shoot fast and quiet. So I love to shoot full auto. I love to shoot suppressed. And given my limited number of shooting days, that's my preference.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about the those cans that go on the end of the guns, those mufflers, the silencers, whatever. So where we stand on the Hearing Protection Act? What's going on? And I've got a lot of questions like directly quoted from people.
Sure.
For me to ask you. And what the F and F and F and F and F and F is going on with the Hearing Protection Act?
All right. So what's going on with the Hearing Protection Act is both bills have been introduced in Congress. These bills were first introduced in 2015. And I'll tell you a true story. 2 weeks ago, we met with a Republican Senate candidate from the South. I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to embarrass him. But we were talking to him about suppressors because it's one of our top legislative priorities. National Right to Carry Reciprocity and Hearing Protection Act, two of our number one and number two priorities. And I asked him about where he was on suppressors, and he said, I'm okay with suppressors, but I'm totally against silencers. So what happened on the day after the election last year is we all woke up really happy, really energized, but Congress didn't wake up educated when it comes to guns, and they certainly didn't wake up and say, let's go pass the Hearing Protection Act. Let's go expand the Second Amendment, recognize self-defense doesn't end at your state line, all the things that we know. So we're in the education piece of the legislative process, which can be very ugly. But the truth is, the reason HPA has not passed and not been put on the president's desk to be signed into law is we don't have the votes. And the worst thing you can possibly do in the legislative arena is bring up a bill that you like and have it lose. Because politicians don't like to change their positions, even the ones that really need to. So we're in the process. We're expecting movement in the House of Representatives soon. I don't want to get into too much legislative strategy, but I think you're going to like what you see here over the next few weeks. Okay. So next question, a big deal, the bump fire stocks. Does the NRA regret making their statement, that initial first statement out of the box? Do they regret that statement? No, not at all. What I would have regretted was the day before we put out that statement, there were enough votes in the House of Representatives, the Republican pro-gun House of Representatives, to pass a Feinstein-Corbella type of bill. The Republicans? There were enough votes. Again, this is not a new phenomenon. When you have a horrific situation take place and politicians' first reaction is, we have to do something. That's not a bad reaction necessarily, but it's a really bad way to legislate. When you don't know the basic facts and you don't understand the basics of firearms and you want to go in and legislate, which is why we said, look, we need to stop having so many conversations about devices and hardware and have a conversation about behavior. The guy behind the trigger, not what type of trigger or what was attached to the firearm. But the truth is, we needed to slow the process down and have an educated conversation. What we also said, I said it on national TV the day that we put that statement out. I went on Tucker Carlson's show and he asked about NRA supporting a ban. We don't support a ban on anything. We don't support confiscation. We don't support buybacks. What we said was the law is the law, and whether we like it or not, as law-abiding gun owners, we have to abide by the law. ATF approved the sale of different devices. It repeatedly under the Obama administration, we said ATF should take a look at it. Doesn't mean we support a ban on anything. But what we're doing is we are strategically working to make sure that really bad policy doesn't become law. That's what the National Rifle Association exists for.
Okay. Well, part of that statement was Wayne LaPierre said, and there's an existing ban on machine guns that we support. And so the Hughes Amendment. So what about that?
Yeah, so Hughes, and you and I have talked about this before. The Hughes Amendment passed as part of the Firearm Owners Protection Act. It was an amendment on the Firearm Owners Protection Act in 1986. FOPA, as it's commonly referred to, had some great things, some things that weren't so great. Part of FOPA was it allowed you to carry across state lines and not risk being arrested. It allowed industry and FFL not to have nonstop, constant presence by ATF in their businesses and in the manufacturing side of it. So FOPA was a good deal. Hughes offered an amendment. NRA opposed it, and we didn't have the votes to beat it. It passed overwhelmingly, and so then it was included as an overall package that NRA supported in 1986. Again, I was 16 years old. I was happy to be driving at that point.
You're personally responsible for that.
But it's the reality is Hughes is what we live under. It's the law. The full autos, whether you think it's a good policy or bad policy, are regulated differently. As you know, I'm a Class 3 guy across the board. SBR, suppressors, full autos. I own them. I love them. It's actually what I enjoy shooting. Would I love to see Hughes repealed? Absolutely. But there's the world that we would like to live in, and there's the political reality that we face. And the truth of the matter is, and which is why when you start opening the door to legislative proposals, particularly as it relates to NFA, you have to be very careful because a lot of these politicians don't understand the basics of semi-autos, much less full autos, and we have to be careful that we don't create more problems than we solve. That being said, should we continue inch by inch to do whatever we can? And people talk about constitutional carry. There's not a constitutional carry law on the books that didn't have the active support and lobbying of the National Rifle Association. But there's also not one on the books that didn't come with a permit process first to prove to all these politicians and to prove to the constituents that law-abiding people can be trusted. And what we've shown is we're the most trustworthy segment of the population. But these things don't just happen. Right to carry reciprocity didn't just happen. The conversation's not just happening because some groups that were out there screaming over the last 6 months. This has been 35 years in the making. So inch by inch, we have to reform NFA. We have to remove suppressors. We have to remove SBRs. We have to do what we can, and we're going to actively do that. We're going to unapologetically do that, but we have to live in the reality of what we're facing from a political standpoint.
Okay. Next, does the NRA conspire with gun manufacturers and Congress to create these situations that might spur on panic buying or increase sales on the retail side? Or
Barack Obama sold more guns and NRA memberships than anybody in the history of the country. We don't have to conspire because our opponents do that for us. There is a real conversation amongst those on the left that truly believe, which is why they supported the other side of the Heller argument of is there a basic right to keep a gun in your home to defend yourself? They said no. There hasn't been a gun ban of argument against the individual right that they haven't embraced. So again, these aren't our words, these are their words. When Justice Breyer says the Second Amendment doesn't mean you have the right to keep a gun in your home, those aren't our words, and we take them seriously. When Nancy Pelosi says she hopes that this conversation over bump slides becomes a slippery slope, we take her at her word. When Dianne Feinstein, when asked about semi-autos, said if I had 51 votes in the Senate, Mr. and Miss America, turn them all in, I would do it. We take her at her word. And so gun owners are worried, and there's a reason to be worried, and the fear is because there is a concerted effort that's extremely well financed by the Michael Bloombergs and George Soroses to disarm the citizenry, to disarm us. And we can have the conversation, and we've had it since this horrific event in Las Vegas, that if we ban certain things from us, from law-abiding people, will that eliminate the criminal element from getting access to it? And it's been proven throughout not just our history, but world history, that that's a fallacy.
I can prove that. I've been to any number of cities in the United States and other countries where I was shot at with guns that they weren't allowed to have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can firsthand knowledge that doesn't work. So you've been saying, you know, hey, Hughes in 1986 and going back in time. Earlier we were talking about George Bush, and if we wouldn't have got George Bush in, then we wouldn't have got. So if you could elaborate
Sure.
on, like everybody wants to give the NRA an F today, okay? And let's say you got an F today, okay? But you've had a good history of bringing A's home.
Well, the truth is the members of the National Rifle Association are responsible for the fact that we're having a conversation about right to carry reciprocity. They're responsible for the fact that we're having a conversation about removing suppressors from NFA. They're responsible for having a conversation about lawsuits that we're winning in states like California to protect, commonly owned magazines. So these things don't just happen. These politicians don't just wake up and decide that they want to go and pursue a pro-Second Amendment, pro-freedom agenda. It happens because of a lot of hard work. And I understand there can be frustration. And look, I'm an NRA member. I'm an NRA employee. I believe passionately, and this is what I've done for 22 years now. This is my career. And so anytime there's an NRA member or a gun owner who's disappointed with something that the National Rifle Association has done, that bothers me. I don't, it's not a popularity contest, but I certainly want to make sure that our members know that I work for you all, and I take it seriously. But there's also, when you start talking about the political realm, and it's been compared to sausage making, it's ugly, and it can be a very, very nasty and ugly business that's not fun to look at. But if you look at the results of this organization, well, we could never, if you ask a lot of gun owners, should the NRA have a blanket policy against supporting any politician who's ever supported a ban on ARs? I think a lot of your viewers and a lot of our mutual friends would say, hell no, they shouldn't support anybody. Well, had we taken that policy, then we would not have supported George W. Bush. He supported a ban on semi-autos. Had we not supported George Bush, we would have gotten Al Gore. Had we gotten Al Gore, we would not have gotten Alito and Roberts, and we would have lost the Heller decision. We would have lost the McDonald decision. Had we gotten Al Gore, we certainly wouldn't have passed and had signed into law the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act in 2005. And without that bill, for the people who don't remember that, there were lawsuits against the gun manufacturers that sued them for third-party criminal misuse of a non-defective gun. The same thing as a drunk driver, suing Ford Motors over a drunk driving accident. They were all going out of business. They were all struggling already, spending hundreds of millions of dollars proving their innocence. They were going out of business. And is the industry stronger today as a result of that law? Every one of them will tell you it's the only reason they're still in business. Mm-hmm. And without the National Rifle Association, without our support of George Bush, who was far from perfect on the gun issue, but again, we put ourselves in a position to win at the Supreme Court, to save the industry, and to put the Second Amendment in a much stronger position. So again, is it pure? Maybe not in some people's eyes, but it's smart, and we win.
It's strategic.
It's absolutely.
Very good. What is the NRA's 5, 10, or 20-year plan to move the Second Amendment forward? Do you guys have any longer range plans that you can share?
Sure. I mean, we're at the Institute for Legislative Action, the arm that I'm honored to run. We run in the political, legal, space, the educational space.
Let me interrupt you. Define the ILA for even members that might
Sure.
not know what you guys do.
So we are part of the National Rifle Association, but we're called the National Rifle Association Institute for Legislative Action, NRA-ILA. We were formed in 1975 because before then, the NRA did not really have a concerted effort to fight back in the political arena, because truthfully it wasn't necessary. We were started by a bunch of Union Civil War generals back in 1871 who wanted to make sure that people knew how to shot, because the Southerners shot better
Those rebels.
than the Northerners. Those rebels, that's right. And that was kind of what we did for the first 100 years of our existence. In 1968, primarily with assassination attempts and social unrest, we saw 1968 Gun Control Act. And to a certain degree, the National Rifle Association and our members were kind of caught off guard, caught flat-footed. So a bunch of people decided in 1975 that we needed to be organized to be able to fight back in the the political arena, the legislative arena, the legal arena, wherever those fights took place. And so they formed NRA-ILA. And that, again, that's the division that I'm honored to run today. And so what it is that we're doing, we are doing everything we can, regardless of where and how, to advance the cause of freedom and to save this country. I mean, we saved the soul of the country in this last election cycle. Again, last summer, all these groups that are criticizing us, I don't remember seeing one thing out of any of them. Right. It was a lonely summer. I mean, we were the only organized group. Sometimes we were the only group in America, including the campaign, that was out knocking on doors, that were running ads, telling what the consequences of a Hillary Clinton presidency would do. But so you start looking at what are our goals. Where our goals from the legislative standpoint is to remove every hurdle between law-abiding Americans and their ability to defend themselves. That's the plain and simple goal. Are we there yet? No, we have a lot of work to do. I mean, you look at right to carry reciprocity, that's a logical next step. It's a no-brainer. The fact that we're having to fight politicians who don't believe that we have a right to defend ourselves as peaceable citizens is crazy, but that's what we deal with. And it's, again, as I mentioned, it's a well-funded opposition. Sometimes there's states like California or New York where people say, how come you haven't done more? How come you didn't oppose the SAFE Act?
One of my questions.
We did oppose the SAFE Act in the legislative arena, and we lost. And then we sued, and we lost. But that doesn't mean that we're not out there continuing to pursue, the Colby case in Maryland, which would, again, protect ARs in the legal arena. So these states that have banned ARs, once we win that case at the Supreme Court level, then we're going to go back and sue and make sure they repeal all those laws. In California, we've sued successfully over magazines, and so our legal arena work continues to expand upon Heller and McDonald. Heller and McDonald were landmark decisions, historic, but they were so narrow. James, as you know, this said that you have the right to keep a pistol in your home to protect your family. That's it. Not outside the home, not black guns, just basic self-defense, and it was a 5-4 decision. But we need to expand upon that. We need to expand upon a recognition by the court that you have a right to basically carry a gun anywhere you have a legal right to be to defend yourself. So that's one of our primary legislative goals. And we have others. Obviously, as I talked about, we need to reform NFA. We need to get suppressors out. We need to continue our work in that area. We need to expand, where you can carry, how you can carry, what you can carry, when you can carry. We need to expand hunting opportunities when we have those chances as well, get government off our back from that standpoint. In the political arena, the way you accomplish those things from a legislative standpoint is to continue to elect people who philosophically agree with you and agree with your positions. And we have a pretty good track record of success in that area. And then there's an education piece to it that, again, we talk about the frustration of politicians not knowing the difference between suppressors and silencers and ARs and full autos and all the rest of it. Well, somebody has to educate them. And it's not always by yelling online. It's by actually going up and spending the time. We've had some of the most obnoxious reporters in America at the NRA Museum, having them listen to suppressed fire. So when they write their articles in the Washington Post, which they can't write anything accurately, but they actually wrote an accurate piece based on their visit to the NRA Museum to hear suppressed rifle fire. And so part of that is the education piece, and then it's to push back when our schools are teaching our kids some perverted version of American history, some perverted version of Constitution and what the Constitution means. And so we're out there, and then somebody has to make sure that the Boy Scouts are teaching riflery. And in order to teach riflery in the Boy Scouts, you have to be an NRA certified instructor. And so again, these things, and giving out grants for ranges to make sure people have a place to actually pull the trigger and get used to it. And those things change based on the region. And out west, it's different than the East Coast and in the South. But all those things take a lot of work. And we're proud of our affiliation with law enforcement, and we put on the police championships out in New Mexico every year, and we train a lot of people in safe and responsible gun ownership, and teach little kids who are too little to be around guns to avoid them as they start to get of age, teaching hunter safety and all those sorts of things, and mentoring programs and things that really make a difference. And if we're going to win, we have to be engaged in the fight.
Absolutely. And I've taken part in some of those things. Like when I was a cop, I got a grant and I did the Eddie Eagle program at schools. I'm the one that did it. And I've taken NRA-based hunter safety. I've taken the NRA law enforcement training, which was the best law enforcement training I ever had. As far, for police, it was the best class, and so I've been the recipient of a lot of that stuff. Now, another thing that people say,
and we're not perfect.
Oh no,
we're not perfect, and we make mistakes, but we all do. But we're pointed in the right direction. And what I can tell you is when we form this circular firing squad, which we do pretty well from time to time, Michael Bloomberg is cheering louder than anyone because we're helping him do his job. Any sort of discontent within our ranks causes a great celebration on the other side.
Yeah. So people accuse me of being a shill for the NRA, and they wonder how much I'm being paid to say nice things about the NRA. So do you know how much money the NRA's ever paid me?
Probably a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Do you know how much money I have donated to the NRA?
I don't.
Over $100,000 through the Friends, and tens of thousands to ILA.
Wow.
And so I don't even talk to him about this stuff. About 120 grand for the Friends.
Well, thank you.
No, it's my responsibility. I would like to talk because people always are like, what has the NRA done for me here? What has the NRA done for me here? And the way I see it, 5 million-ish NRA members, 100 million-ish gun owners. So the NRA members are doing 100% of the work with 5%. I mean, think about where you work. If there were 100 employees and 95 of them weren't helping and only 5 were working, like you guys are doing an amazing job for having 5 people doing that work. So thank you for that. But it's just that I see the amount of passion and that goes into this stuff, and when we start ripping apart each other, the NRA or whoever it might be, it is counterproductive on any number of levels. But I wanted to make that point, and I've never talked to you about that money stuff before ever. But I wanted to say that to you because I knew you probably didn't know, and that they call me a shill for you, and you cost me money. And I'm saying, but the way I look at it is, if I make sure that Chris has bus fare to get to D.C., then you can go fight for me, and that's what I want to do, is to make sure that you can.
Well, and the number one reason people join the organization is for representation in all of these, political fights and all these elections. And you're right, 5 million it's a great number. The fact that 5 million Americans voluntarily join an organization that's out there every day fighting for the freedom that they believe in is pretty special. Percentage, pretty lousy percentage. Mm-hmm. But somebody has to get out there and fight these fights. And look, we can all disagree on strategy. We can have disagreements inside the family. I mean, you have them at home, I have them at home. But at the end of the day, if you own a firearm, you should thank your fellow NRA members. If you carry a firearm, you should thank your fellow NRA members. If you believe that it's worth being out there day in and day out, then you should consider, joining the organization, because you can buy a gun and lose a freedom real quickly if you don't fight for it, and that's what we're out there doing.
At the end of every class, we do our debrief, asking our students what did they learn and things like that. And one of the last things I say to them is, if you're not an NRA member, you're wrong as dick cancer. That's the wrongest thing I could think of.
Well, it's that's pretty wrong. I agree with you on that. Look, again, this is an organization that filled with employees who represent the members all across the country with a shared goal, and that's to make sure that this freedom is not just protected, but promoted and expanded as best we can. And it's hard. Look, if you're an NRA member in California, God bless you. That is an absurd group of politicians who have no respect for the people they represent, none whatsoever. And so, it's frustrating because California 30 years ago was pretty normal.
Yeah.
But if we can't win in the legislature, we are committed to winning in the courts, and we will fight. It's easy to be a gun owner in Idaho, or Alabama. It's tough in New York or New Jersey or Maryland or obviously anywhere out on the West Coast. And so I hate more than anything losing, because freedom lost is so much more difficult to get back. And that's our guiding principle. We want to expand your right to defend yourself. Of course, we want to expand your shooting opportunities and your hunting opportunities, but ultimately, this is about whether or not you have a right to defend yourself. We believe you do. That's what we fight for every day. It's not always pretty. The legislative process can be unbelievably frustrating, not just for those people who are watching on the outside, but for those of us who have to suffer fools for a living, who have to go up there and deal with this every day. But we're committed to it.
It's unfortunate. I would I would never ask you to list the names of the people that are giving you the most problem up there, but I mean I know we know most of them, but it's I can't even imagine. So about those states that you just talked about, California and New York, New Jersey. So what can they do? Like what they're sitting there, they're like, what am I supposed to do as a New York resident to get this thing changed? As an individual, what should they be doing?
Inch by inch. Recognize that none of these fights none of these wins came overnight. We're not 35 years ago. There were a handful of states that had right to carry permit type processes. There was a national conversation, and a big one, on banning all handguns in America. 42% of the American public supported a ban on all handguns in America. The reason we're now having a conversation 35 years later on right to carry reciprocity, recognizing our ability to defend ourselves in any state, is because a lot of work went into passing right to carry permit processes state after state every year, day in, day out. Yeah. And again, those were lonely times. Most of these groups criticizing us weren't even formed. Right. But we were out there fighting. We've been out there fighting for constitutional carry, and it's an inch by inch win in the legal arena. These are tens of millions of dollars that have had to be spent in cases all across the country, decade after decade, to put us in a position to win a Heller case and to win a McDonald case. And a lot of elections. We talked about the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. It took 7 years to pass it. We had to change the face of Congress 3 times over 3 different election cycles until we had the votes to pass it. So these big wins rarely come quick, right. And they certainly don't come easy. So for the people living in California, the people living in New Jersey, those states, stay engaged, stay involved, be patient, be committed. We will win. We've been called persistent, we've been called hard-headed, we've been called pain in the ass, however you want to describe us from our commitment standpoint. That's all fair. That's all fair. We're determined. We're not going to back down from pursuing these goals. And piece by piece, let's find a legislator who's arrogant and cocky, which is easy. Find one who hasn't worked as hard as they should have, which is not that difficult. And let's work together and start taking some out. And let's start sending a message in a state like California that you might have the votes now, but we're not going down without a fight. We have 300,000 members in the state of California. There are millions of law-abiding supporters. We just need to organize. And if we do that and we stay committed, we can start slowly, inch by inch, to turn things around.
Well, a lot of Californians have posted to me saying, well, I'm not going to join unless they do something for us. And I'm like, how can they do something for you?
But here's the truth, and I've told our members, I went out and keynoted the California Rifle and Pistol Association convention a couple years ago. At the Institute for Legislative Action, we spend more financial resources and more human resources in the state of California than any state in the country. Period. What I also said was every dime that a California member sends to the Institute of Legislation will be spent in California. Every dime. We're not going to take a California dollar and spend it in Tennessee. We're not going to take a California dollar and spend it in Idaho. Every dollar. But the truth is, we spend a lot more money, more of your Tennessee dollars end up getting spent in California because it's worth fighting.
It's okay with me.
And when we spend, when we send out one mailing, to our California membership, it's a couple $100,000 for each time we mail. That doesn't include, the on the ground. That doesn't include, any sort of advertising. So it's a big fight. It's an expensive fight, but it's a fight worth fighting. So we're gonna continue in California, in New York, and as long as our members stick with us, we'll continue to inch by inch. Again, we want a big one on magazines in California in the legal arena. We need a Supreme Court win on carried outside the home. I mean, that's the next for the states where we can't pursue the legislative agenda. We need to further the legal footprint. And again, that doesn't just happen. That's happening inch by inch, case by case, all across the country.
Absolutely.
Including ARs in the Colby case in Maryland, which was one of the most you know, even for a non-lawyer, you can read it and like, how did they just completely make up an argument against ARs? But that's what they did. That's what we're fighting, and that's what we're going to continue to fight.
The Colby case was one of the questions. The people were asking what. I think you answered it, but they were asking that.
Yeah.
So, what is the NRA doing to be more appealing or open to minorities and the LGBT community?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at what we've done with NRA TV, you've looked at our commentators, whether it's Dana Lash or Colin Noir, Gabby Franco. I mean, we're the nation's largest and oldest civil rights organization. When we say that, it drives our opponents crazy. So we're the nation's largest and oldest civil rights organization. So we're out there in the legal arena, representing anyone and everyone who's had their Second Amendment rights denied. Whether that's in Delaware with Josephine Byrd, in the early, Heller and McDonald cases, representing, African Americans, people from, different backgrounds, different sexual orientations. We're about defending freedom in this country, and so it's a constant struggle because when you turn on the national news, they're not going to tell that story.
Right.
They're certainly not going to tell a story of a, father taking his son to the range or a mom taking her son to the range, to teach, personal responsibility and all the great lessons and respect that you learn as shooters in this country. And so it's up to us, and it's hard, and it's up to people like you who are unapologetic, going out there and telling the truth on these issues. But it's a constant struggle. The good news is when you ask the American people, we did a poll last year and asked all likely voters, do you believe that law-abiding Americans have the right to keep a gun in their home of their choice to defend themselves? 99 million likely voters said yes. There are only about 125, 130 million who vote in a presidential year. So, and it cut across every demographic, black, white, everything. And so this idea of armed self-defense resonates with American people. American people inherently believe that I might not want to do it, but you're damn right I have the right to
Right.
choose for myself whether or not to protect myself and my family. As long as we continue to make our case to the American people, we're going to be okay. But once people give up, whether it's apathy, they think everything's fine, which happens in our community, or the other side just becomes that much more emboldened, then we'll be in trouble. And again, that's what we fight every day.
Yep. I made videos about how if we have a fight, we go fight it, and as soon as we get the upper hand, we just sit down and rest. I'm like, that's when we have the inertia is when we should push forward. And I watch things like when Trump gets in, like numbers drop off for the NRA support and all that stuff, and I was like, this is where we should go.
And we have to, if we want to keep winning in the legislative arena and the political arena, we have to bring the same intensity and the same moral purpose that we bring to the elections. And you can't win a big fight in an election and then turn around and not continue to work hard to pursue the agenda that got us there in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I know we've covered this generally, but specifically, does the NRA have the interests of the individual gun owner at heart? Are you worried about the individual gun owner's personal liberty as far as the Second Amendment?
That's what we do. That's who we are. I mean, we talk about, does the NRA do this, or does the NRA believe in this, or does the NRA oppose this? The NRA is a group of people.
Yeah.
It's you and me and 5 million people like us who believe that it's worth fighting in a collective, organized, strategic way to defend and expand this freedom. So that's all we are, one by one, people who believe in this. So absolutely, this is personal for both of us, for all gun owners. I mean, regardless of what you own, whether you're a wing shooter with a side-by-side shotgun or a competitive shooter or 3-gun or anything else, as soon as we don't care about one another, as soon as our only interest are our individual interest, then we get into trouble. But as we represent individuals, the hearts and minds, we don't sell a product. We're not a gun manufacturer. We sell the individual freedom to the hearts and minds of the American people, and we do it passionately, and we do it every day, and we do it without apology.
I love it. Favorite ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip.
Good choice. What brand?
I mean, Baskin Robbins.
Okay, well, it could be worse. Favorite like gun guy movie?
Favorite gun guy movie? Oh man, that's a tough one. And there's a bunch of good ones out there.
I know.
I mean,
all you gotta do is pick one.
I can't pick a
I've
Harvey
never
Weinstein.
seen him. I've never seen him speechless before.
I can't pick a Harvey Weinstein movie because he's such a jackass. So I'm gonna leave Pulp Fiction and a lot of those out. Young Guns was entertaining, but Matrix, I'd probably go with Matrix.
Matrix. For me, it's Heat, probably.
Yeah, that's strong. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
All right. I just wanted to lighten the mood a little bit. We've been getting kind of heavy. So, is there anything? Okay, so my people, were the black rifle, polymer pistol carrying.
Our people.
Well, I'm just saying,
I'm one of your people.
My viewers on my channel are people.
Yeah.
What would you tell them? Like, would you say, "Hey guys, it's going to be okay"? What would you?
We would have lost ARs a long time ago if not for the work of the members of the National Rifle Association. We are going to fight like hell to make sure that we can own and use anything that we should be able to own and use. And so, this is a fight. I mean, we took down. We talked about the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act in 2002, 2003. They added a semi-auto ban to the bill that would save the industry, and we killed it. We killed the bill that would save the industry because they attached a semi-auto ban to it. And we said, no, we'll go through another Congress or two until we have the votes to do it the right way. There are millions, 15, 20 million people who own ARs. I'm one of them. Just about everybody I work with at ILA either owns them or wants to own them. We are committed to everyone, regardless of what you shoot. We want you to be able to do it. And so, trust us, it's an ugly process at times. We don't always say things the way people want us to say it. We don't always, fight the way people necessarily want us to fight, but we win. And we have a long track record of winning because the members all across the country are willing to fight with us.
Right. Now, and I won't name any. There are other positive gun groups, working on stuff that they have a positive message and stuff like that. But what I tell people all the time is it's okay to be a member of those organizations, but you have to be an NRA member. And if nothing else, it's because Schumer and Pelosi and all them, they go, NRA. It's just like, I pay my money just to hear her just have heartburn over the NRA.
Well, it's, I've purchased a lot of things that I never shoot only because there are people who don't want me to own them.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. The act of defiance is great. And look, there's some groups out there with awesome names and awesome slogans. And I look around, over these last 22 years that I've been, fighting for the National Rifle Association, and they haven't been there. When we were fighting for, in Wisconsin for right to carry, when it was one of the final states to pass.
That's when it killed LaSort.
Exactly. It would have happened long ago if we had somebody better than LaSort doing it. But it was, it was lonely. And last year with President Trump, or then candidate Trump, it was a very lonely summer. And you look to these other groups and look, put your money where your mouth is. See where they've spent their money. And again, I support any individual and any group that believes in the Second Amendment and that's out there willing to fight. So I'm not knocking the other groups, but there's only one group that's responsible for the fact that people own ARs, the fact that people can carry guns legally, and that's the National Rifle Association. We've been around for a long time. We're going to continue to be around. And the more people that we have supporting this organization, the stronger the Second Amendment's going to be. And the flip side of that is for all the people who are, NRA just needs to go away. NRA goes away, Second Amendment goes away, plain and simple.
It'd be neat to have like a Scrooge movie where we can see what the world would be like without the NRA.
Well, I can tell you just in this last election cycle, I mean, you talk about how, excited, maybe a little irrational exuberance, but excited over the fact that we have a pro-gun president and a seemingly pro-gun House and Senate. But the difference, without the National Rifle Association, Hillary would be president. Neil Gorsuch would not be on the Supreme Court, and it wouldn't be Merrick Garland. who they put up before. It'd be Barack Obama or Eric Holder or some other radical liberal. And a court case would be moving through right now to overturn Heller and McDonald. And if you talk about Heller, and that's that you have the right to keep a handgun in your home, and also the other piece of that was a total ban on handguns, which is what D.C. had, went too far. Well, let's say that that was overturned. And so, no, you don't have an individual right, and a ban on handguns doesn't go too far, then California, New Jersey, New York, almost overnight, they ban all handguns. And if you can ban an entire category of firearms, then, I mean, ARs, that's like low hanging fruit for them, but why not ban all rifles? Why not ban all shotguns? So the consequences of NRA not being successful in elections or in lawsuits or in the legislative arena would be devastating to the Second Amendment as we know it. And we would have lost it not in 10, 20 years. We'd have lost it in a matter of 2 or 3 years.
All right. And this is the heaviest question I got. I got this repeatedly. And answer it however you feel. When's it time to stop talking and start doing something?
Well, talk is cheap. Talk's cheap in the political arena. Talk's cheap in the legal arena. You know, we have to stand united. Again, even if you know, we all argue with our family members and argue with our friends, but we have to stand united with the core principle of, is this fight, number one, worth fighting for, and are we willing to do what it takes to win it? And we're willing to do what it takes to win it.
All right. Chris, that's really all I got, man. And thank you for just talking. Like, you know, you're a very eloquent speaker, but like, and I've seen you on stage a bunch of times, and you're articulate and wonderful, and not that you're in any way unreal when you're doing that, but just having this conversation with you, I think is going to let a lot of people see who you really are and kind of see what the NRA and specifically the ILA is about. And I think this was needed, like just for them to see Chris.
Well, I appreciate it. Look, I'm a guy from West Tennessee. Grew up not far from you. Trained with you in West Tennessee. Grew up hunting and shooting with my dad and 3 brothers. I don't shoot as much as I'd like, only because I joke that I spend more time protecting our rights and exercising them. But it's not from not wanting to. And like I said, we're out there every day, dedicated to our fellow Americans, not just our fellow NRA members, obviously, who pay our salaries and support the organization. So thank you for that. But anyone who believes in this idea, this concept of individual freedom, because without the Second Amendment, nothing else works. This country is doomed. Freedom as we know it is gone. And we take that seriously, and I take it seriously. It's an honor. It's an honor for me to work here. I carry a gun to work, and had an MP5 on my desk and suppressors and magazines and all the things that we all enjoy and like as gun owners. And so, but it's also it's a serious fight with very real consequences if we don't win. And there's a determination, I can promise you, by everyone here to move this ball forward. Not going to happen overnight.
Yep.
That's the most disappointing thing, is to have to tell people that, no, we can't snap our fingers and repeal Hughes, pass constitutional carry nationwide, and expand on our Supreme Court victories just by snapping our fingers. But we're committed to it.
Absolutely.
We're committed to it, inch by inch.
Inch by inch.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, brother.
All right, buddy.